Welcome to the Magnificast, a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. I'm your co-host, Dean Detloff.
And I'm your other co-host, Matt Bone-Nico.
Whoa, that's pretty spooky already, and someone must have tipped you off, Matt, because I know I invited you here for another lock-in episode, but I have invited you here after hours, after all the youth group kids have gone home. And, you know, I've been staying late every week, working on my secret projects after everybody leaves. And I know you've been working really hard as the senior pastor to kind of project a more family-friendly environment at the church. And this may or may not contribute to that goal, but I do need you to just kind of maybe come down these stairs with me into what I'd like to reveal to you as the Magnificast Bone Zone, our very own Bone Church. Right now, as you can see, as we descend down this walkway, mostly it's just a handful of Spirit Halloween skeletons, but they're kind of placeholders, and I figure eventually one day, you know, the two of us could at least be at the front, so I have a few plaques here that identify that we can be here, but I just want to get your thoughts on this new addition that we've made to the walk-in gym.
Yep, this looks great to the to the gym, the Family Life Center. You've taken it and turned it into the Family Future Death Center. I appreciate that so much. That's great. We're going to start telling people that if they tithe more, we'll put their body in here when they die.
That's right.
And the teens are going to love this, by the way. We've been researching, we've been deep in the minds of church research, trying to figure out how to reach Gen Z, and this is what we've come up with. I think everything has been pointing to more bones in the church. No more basketball, no more volleyball, no more various other sport balls. We're just getting rid of all of it in the Family Life Center. We're bulldozing it all, and we're just going to put bones in here now. And the kids, they are going to be crazy for this place.
They're going to love it when they're locked into this Bone Zone overnight, for sure. I feel like it's going to be pretty popular.
We do need to run Bone Zone past the marketing team just
right.
Sort of
I
just
can see that. Now that you're saying it, now that I'm not the only one saying it, I can see that.
Yeah, we can't invite teams to a place called the Bone Zone. It's so important.
Yeah, okay,
we don't do that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I agree, and I'm probably going to say it a few more times just out of habit, because that's how I've just been muttering that to myself every night as I'm down here arranging all these Spirit Halloween skeletons. So
no, if it was adults, if it was a married, sort of like the married Sunday school, young adult Bone Zone, that's chill. That makes sense. Have you thought about perhaps the cool crypt?
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's not enough bones in the title. I think that's one problem, but I can see where you're going, and I
sort of infers that there are bones, but no, I get it. People might think there's just a coffin in here, and we don't want to give them that impression. There are real plastic skeletons right now, just placeholders.
If you're gonna have a bone church, I think you can't infer it. You have to have it proudly displayed. The title. It has to be pretty clear. That's one thing we learned from the Capuchins. You should also have an audio tour, and we do have to work on that. We have to find a few young teens from the youth group who want to record an audio tour talking about how if the Marquis de Sade were alive today, he'd visit our bone church too, just like he visited the one in Rome. I think we can have some really good fiction about it, but I agree we're going to have to be pretty careful.
Right. Okay, you know what? We'll keep workshopping some of this content here. We need to come up with some better branding, like we said, for the teens. Before the teens get here, we have to have some better branding. But for now, maybe we can move on, and maybe it'll come to us as we get through the evening, the after hours bone evening.
I do want to just share a few programming notes, because I think it's important for people to know. The first is, obviously, we Catholics, we have a particular bone perversion, as we've talked about on the show, but I want to emphasize this is an ecumenical bone church. The Catholics do get it on Sundays. I feel like that's just kind of our right because we were here first, but I'm happy to, whatever. The Baptists can come in here and do whatever they want on Mondays. Maybe the Lutherans, they can get it Tuesdays. Wednesday feels like kind of an Orthodox day. I couldn't tell you why, but it just feels like they're kind of Wednesday Christians, so they can have it that day. And basically everybody else has to fight over Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I feel like we can, have some special time around here. Ecumenically open bone church. Almost said Bone Zone again. It's an ecumenically open bone church. And I do want to also affirm, I think this transition means that the listeners of the Magnificast Whether they like it or not, are officially bone perverts. And I just want to note that that's not a unilateral decision, because I did make a poll in the Discord, and these are people who are tithing, whose skeletons will obviously reserve the right to be placed in the bone church, and they are psyched about it. People are into it, and I'm glad that we finally have a name for our own listeners.
I'm also very glad. Again, another one that we're probably gonna have to run past the marketing team, but this one I feel like they're gonna be pretty happy about. Hey, it's 5 minutes into the podcast now. It's 6 minutes into the podcast now. Let's just take one quick step back from the Bone Church, and let's just say, hi. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, this is probably really confusing and jarring. A few months ago,
if this is your first time listening to the podcast, you should probably turn it off and maybe work your way up to it.
That's true. You do need a little bit of runway. A few months ago, Dean and I did go to Rome to a Capuchin crypt where we saw what is a bone church, and we've been kind of obsessed with it ever since. So what we're doing in this episode is kind of like what we did last week with the lock-in, where we're answering the tough teen questions that come to us from Reddit.com, and then also talk about current events. But this time it's more of a bone theme because I don't know exactly why it is, but it is, and it needs to be that. So, anyways, we can come back into the bone church, into the bone zone, the cool crypt, if you will, and we can get some of these hot burning questions. And Dean, you're gonna love this first one.
I can't wait.
This is a 2-year-old question, so not hot off the presses. This is one's been aging like a fine wine.
Walking and talking.
Yep. That's right. It's a big baby question from Our Christianity, and the question is: do angels have flesh and bone? Because the Bible, when people and animals, this is a very confusing sentence. Because the Bible, when people and animals, they will have flesh and bone. It's quoting, this post is quoting a Bible verse, which is not important. So, Dean, I have some very interesting answers to this question already posited by the great users of the Christianity subreddit. But before we get to their answers, I want to hear your answers. Do angels have flesh and bone?
I think, to their shame, probably not, which is too bad. But if they have one or the other, I think it should just be bones. I guess, okay, wait, hang on.
Okay.
I just discovered the Angel of Death is usually a big skeleton guy. The Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
So I'd say, if anything, it's all bones under there.
So, okay. So what you're suggesting is that the Grim Reaper is not sort of an outlier in the Angel cinematic universe.
He's the only honest one.
The rest of them are the same. They just have other robes on. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, they might put some things over their bones because, they're always showing up in the Bible and people are very scared. And I can imagine they would be even more scared if it was a skeleton showing up. So they understand they should go to whatever heaven's version of Spirit Halloween is and get themselves a costume and come down. But I think the key is that it's all bones underneath.
Okay. I can buy that. That makes a lot of sense to me. The bone angels go to the heavenly Spirit Halloween and come back with a sort of like multi-eyed, tentacly
That's right.
costume. Okay, that's awesome. I do like that. That's great. Here's what one other user says, just so we can get some sort of variety of opinion about this. This is a purely theological topic where I don't know if there's a complete right answer, though I think you've gotten quite close. Someone with the Reddit flair Catholic Latin Counter Reformation has posited this. Normal, definitely not a weirdo at all. No. Angels are purely spirits versus humans who have both a physical body and a spiritual soul. They are able to take a corporeal form temporarily, but that's for the sake of interaction with us. So in this one, angels are purely spirit, but they could have flesh and bones, or just bones, when they come talk to people. What do you think about that take? I have one more after that.
Yeah, I think it is probably right, but the key is that when they do take on a corporeal form, they have to put their bones on just like the rest of us, one foot at a time before they get the rest of it on there. And I think, probably there are spiritual bones that they do have. I've never seen them, so I think it's hard for me to talk about. And maybe we just have the physical bones by analogy to kind of give us a bit of a sense of what a spiritual bone would look like. But I gotta say, one way or another, there's bones in there.
Okay. I think that's good too. So we have, they are always bones. They are bones when they come talk to us. And then here's a third option to really ponder, which I think is pretty challenging. It's tough. This is a different user altogether who just identifies himself as a Christian, not as a Latin Counter-Reformation. So for better or worse. Angels have hyperdimensional physical bodies that interact with lower dimensional bodies like our own. Okay, so hyperdimensional physical bodies that can interact with lower dimensional bodies like our own. And then they go on to say the Hebraic Old Testament and New Testament beliefs regarding the soul is that we are souls, not that we have a soul separate to the physical body. That checks out. I think I've heard it before. When we die, we become less functional souls. What you're advocating with the purely spiritual bodies is Platonic dualism, something not recognized in the Bible. So what do you think about that? What I'm thinking about a lot about it, and I can't really bring any of my words into being because they are hyperdimensional. So they're just kind of out there is my problem right now.
Let's see. Hyperdimensional physical bodies. HDPBs for short. I think probably HDPBs are not real. I think that definitely can't be right. I think they're like I said, they're bones. They might have spiritual bones. I think we could probably make a good theological case for that. I think we cannot make a good theological case for them being HDPBs. And if this person is going to rely on the Bible, they're not going to find the word dimensional anywhere in that whole book. I've read it and I can tell you it's not in there. So they're definitely wrong.
I keep reading this comment. I'm trying to parse out what the word hyperdimensional really means. And it's like, sometimes people get really, really bonkers and it's like, there's 3 dimensions, there's 4 dimensions, there's 5 dimensions. But hyperdimensional is not like, that's just like all of the dimensions at once. It's many.
The Mountain Dew dimension.
I'm doing the do and I'm talking to the angels. And man, there's some other troubling stuff in that comment too about becoming a less functional soul. I don't know what to make of any of that. So I think that it is probably that they're bones.
Right. It's the simplest possibility.
And according to Occam's razor, the simplest one is the one that you have to believe. It's just it's just that they're bones, not a hyperdimensional body. That doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, let me give you a question now that we're really settling in here. I've lit a few more candles here in the Bone Church just to kind of up the vibe a little bit, and there aren't any spider webs yet, but maybe we could bring a few spiders in here just to help the vibe out a little. I think this is the right space to hear this particular question. It's from Our Christianity. It's 7 months old, and the title is, I dreamt of wet, all caps, W-E-T. I dreamt of wet bones forming a human figure. And the body of the text is, I researched the biblical meaning of dry bones. I found little on wet bones. What do you think?
Yeah. Great point. Oh, sorry. Am I answering now?
I'm asking you what you think about these wet bones.
Okay, yeah. Of course you get the dry bones, right? You get the Valley of Dry Bones that there are all these great Christian, like, crust punk songs about. They come back to life and then they get meat on their bones, and that's a cool story. We love to see that. God puts them all back together. The wet bones, though, the dry bones would have to become wet when they get the meat on them in the book, in the Bible book. So that's something. You had a dream about that, though. Like, how wet are we talking? Sopping?
I wonder how, like, you're seeing the bones, you're noting they're wet, and what are the visual or other cues that tell you it's wet? I feel like if I saw a bone that just happened to be wet, I might not get it. I might think it's just a shiny bone, for example, but they must be wet enough to be like, they're dripping.
And, okay, here's the thing, though. The wet bone, it's on the it's on the yuckier side of the spectrum. I mean, bones are all inherently
Yeah.
yucky, right? Like, we know that. We know that they're all yucky a little bit, even though we like them. Don't get me wrong. It's a yucky like.
That's why we like them.
It is why. But if they're wet, I don't know. I'm not touching those bones. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go to the church that has the wet bones in it. I don't like that. I don't like that idea.
Let me blow your mind, though, because what if you yourself are full of wet bones right now?
And that's fine. They're all inside me, and I don't have to think about them basically ever. And that seems pretty okay with me, yeah. Yeah, but if I had to see sort of an external wet bone, I don't think I could handle that in a great way.
Just imagining a bit of a square here, and in one quadrant we have dry bones outside, good. Dry bones inside, bad. Wet bones inside, good. Wet bones outside, bad.
That is correct. Yeah. Yep. That's it. Because my bones inside have to be wet. That's how I like them.
Yeah.
But outside, if they're wet, that's bad. Because that is sort of a signal about a lot of other stuff going on with the bones I don't want to be privy to, I think.
Right. That's more of a nightmare than a dream.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, this person does say, well, one person dared to comment, and they said, nothing but a dream.
Brave.
And then the OP person did comment back, and they said, are you sure? My first grandson was born a year later. So.
Well, so, sorry, does that comment posit that maybe the baby was the wet bone?
Could be.
Okay. I'm in the yucky part of the quadrant right now still, sort of mentally, and I need to get out of it. So, Dean, let me really quickly run this one past you. This is a question that comes to us about bones, but in sort of a roundabout way. This is a 3-year-old post from the Christianity subreddit. It says Capuchin crypt, and then it's a reference to the Capuchin crypt that is both in Palermo and the one that's in Rome that we saw. In this post, the pictures are all mixed up together, where some of them are from the one in Rome, and some of them are from the one that's in Palermo. And I don't like that. I'm flipping through, and I do recognize some, but some I don't recognize. So, anyways, Capuchin crypt, and then the title ends with the word thoughts. So it's inviting a lot of things into the conversation. But here's the really, really important thing. The very first comment, top of the line, people are upvoting this one left and right. And it says this: good way to remember our death. Must be impossible to clean, though. And then another user says, doubt it. And then the OP says, how can you clean all of this? And then the person again responds and says, just spray it down the hose. I don't think anyone's wet bones is exactly it. Which puts us back into the yucky quadrant. But here's the bigger question, Dean. The bone church that you've created, the bone church that we've been to, the other bone churches that we do know exist, but we've only sort of visited them in our mind's eye at this point. How do you clean them? How do you clean these bones? Because the bones in the bone church didn't seem dirty, I wouldn't say. I mean, there's sort of dirt floor, but they didn't seem like the bones themselves were dirty. So what's going on in this sort of situation? How are these bones becoming clean?
You know, it is strange because when I think about it, I'll have to review the photos that we did regrettably take. And when I think about it, I can't remember them being particularly dusty or blemished or yucky.
No.
One thing I do remember is that the windows were open, and apparently the Marquis de Sade also acknowledged that the windows were open. So for at least a couple hundred years, these windows have been open. And maybe that's just the key. Just don't ever close your window, and you'll never have to clean.
Okay. I think that the open windows is more about the smell than the cleanliness of the bones themselves. I think that someone has to get in there and dust them off every now and again.
I don't know. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Nope, that sounds pretty yucky. Yep, using a feather duster on these bones. Yeah, I don't think so.
Part of the Bone Church tour, you know, it's an audio tour, but there's no point in which you can ask anybody there questions about the Bone Church, and that's by
design.
Right, of course. Because if you did, that would open up a whole can of worms that really nobody's prepared to face. But if I could ask one question, it would be, does somebody get in there and clean them up? I need to know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Okay. Let's say you had to do it. You had to be the bone cleaner. How would you do it? What to you would be like that? I did a good enough job that I can go home. At what point would you feel that after doing something?
I would stick the Roomba in there and just kind of let it do its thing. And then I would probably leave. I think that would be about it.
Yeah, that Roomba's going to have a hard time when it goes over to the literal dirt floor.
Yeah, I guess so. There's something like, if somebody said, oh, hi, you're the Capuchin brother that has to go clean the bones. I feel like you could just be like, yeah, I'm done. And if somebody was like, well, the bones aren't clean enough, and it's like, are you sure they're bones? How would you know? Like, how would you know what a clean bone looks like? I don't know.
Can there be a drone for bones, a bone drone? So nobody has to touch the bones.
I think that, no, I don't think you can do that. I don't like the idea. No tactical surgical strikes to clean the bones, please.
Yeah, all right. Maybe that's part of the miracle of the Bone Church. It's such a holy place it doesn't get dirty.
Yeah, I'm happy to believe that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Man, I did find this Reddit question while you were talking, and it's disgusting. The other one, the one that's not in Rome, it's a next level ick factor, I gotta tell you. There's a guy in one of these pictures, and he's just hanging off the wall, and he doesn't seem to have feet or maybe arms. I don't know. It's a little extra yucky, but who am I to judge? I don't know. I guess I just have more growing to do.
The one that's in Palermo, as I understand it. Sorry, this is not a joke. This is a real statement that I'm making. The one that's in Palermo, as I understand it, also holds the bones of just like community members and not just the Capuchin brothers. So there's like
just like ours will.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. It's just got guys in it, bone guys. And bone girls.
And both they thems. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to our Anglicanism. This is not a particularly spicy question, but I think it's maybe a good sort of way to ease us into talking about who might be coming through this bone church. The title of the post here is "Am I too weird theologically?" And the body is, so I'm Anglican, but I wouldn't say I fall into any group comfortably. I believe in the 5 solas, for example, but I also believe in venerating saints' relics and praying to saints as helpful practice spiritually. Is there anyone else like this? I feel like I'm the only one. So I'm just thinking, my God. This is a particular species of bone pervert. Someone who believes the 5 solas for sure, but also would like to get a hand on those bones. And is that too weird? Is there anyone else like this? Is this the only one?
This is such a funny thing to post in the Anglican subreddit, because this is like the... without being misogynistic at all here, this is like the Anglican pick me. Like, oh, I'm such a weirdo. Oh my God, can you believe all these these absolutely wild things that I do? I'm praying to relics. Haha, can't believe it. This is like going to a Lego convention and being like, yeah, look at this Death Star out of Legos I built, everybody. Isn't that weird? And how quirky of me. And everyone's like, yeah, no kidding. I do this too. We're at the Lego convention together.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, because unanimously to a person, every single commenter, and there are many comments, there are 38 of them, they all say you're just Anglican.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. This is a person posting to to get a particular type of attention, and then everyone else is like, yeah, no kidding, we all do this. We're a bunch of weirdos. We're the strangest people within Christianity. Come on.
Here's what I do like about it, though, Matt. When we were wandering through Rome, I know that you did feel called to repent and submit to the Pope, and we almost got you, but in the end you evaded us. And I do think, though, it makes me feel better as your friend to know that I can still love you as a bone pervert, and that there's room in your own tradition to kind of share this particular point of attraction and repulsion.
Here's the thing, though. I think that I like the Catholic bones, but I don't support Anglicans doing this just because it's too cringy. It's just not. It's not that the bones are bad. It's that the Anglicans can't handle this. That's the thing. It's just they're not spiritually ready for this. If you're posting about the bones on Reddit and about how cool you think they are, you're not ready for this.
There is something that feels normal about like an Italian grandma going to the Capuchin Bone Church. That feels
Yes.
like, not scary and not weird, completely wholesome even. But there is something weird about a British gentleman going to the Bone Church.
Don't like it. I don't like that at all. Nope, not good.
Smoking his pipe, using the word winsome, talking about bones. I don't think it works.
I don't think so either. Speaking of that, by the way, a British gentleman. I mean, first of all, I'm not a British gentleman, but I did learn really recently that there is a church in Scotland called Blessed John Duns Scottish Parish. It's a parish church with like a friary attached to it in some fashion. But at this church in Scotland, in Glasgow, nonetheless, is a golden coffin that only holds the body bones of Saint Valentine. And I'm kind of tempted to go look at them because it's like I've seen this guy's skull over in Rome, and how cool would it be to see the rest of his body in Glasgow?
You gotta 100% the saint.
I know. I've heard his heart is somewhere else. I can't remember. There's a reliquary somewhere out there that has his heart in it. But like, it's like the ultimate Pokemon Go is just really collecting all of
them. It's a real Dragon Ball.
Exactly. I wonder what happens when I see them all. I don't know. Can't imagine. Someday I'll get there.
You get a Valentine card in the mail. So what I love about that though is it's Blessed John Duns Scottish Church, and I did look it up, and yes, of course, it is run by the Franciscans, so you can't get rid of them. Hang on. I am looking at the Wikipedia of this, and I do want to read something absolutely bonkers. Okay. In 1975, building work on the church was completed. At the time, there were 4 Catholic churches in Gorbals. Eventually, after a massive construction project in the area, the other churches were closed. It became the only one remaining. In 1993, the remains of St. Valentine were moved to that church. The remains were kept in a cardboard box on top of a wardrobe. In 1999, 1 year after the closure of St. Francis Church, the remains were rediscovered and put in the church in a box labeled Corpus Valentini Martyris.
That rules.
So they did just have it in a cardboard box for about 6 years. Somewhere until someone found it and said we should put this in a better box.
Can you imagine being like the Franciscan guy that finds this cardboard box of bones and be like, oh yeah, what's this again? We stuck it back here 20 years ago.
Imagine being the Franciscan guy who got them in a cardboard box and thought, I'll deal with this later. I don't have time for this.
I'm super busy. I have to go pray for 3 hours.
I'm not going to forget it. I'm going to put it up on top of the wardrobe. I'll get it later. I'll definitely remember.
But you know how sometimes there are small tasks in your life that you just like put off forever. Like you got to send the email, you got to run down to the corner shop, you've got to, go take the laundry out of the wash machine or whatever. And I'm sure that's just like that. I've put the bones up there and I'm going to get to them really quick. Don't worry about it. And then, a few years pass and all of a sudden you got to go get these bones.
That's all right. I hope this happens to me.
I hope it happens to you too. As long as the bones aren't wet, I'm happy about it.
This episode is out of control. My cat is just like wandering around the table where we're recording and meowing at me. I feel like there's some good Halloween energy going on. He's not quite a black cat. He's a gray cat. But yeah, I don't know. I said it's a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics, but I lied. It's not. It's not anymore, I guess.
Not right now, at least. We've taken a detour. All right, I have one more Reddit question then that I have to read because it is very funny. And this one's not about bones. So if you've been really turned off by this whole bone conversation, this one's kind of reining it back in just a little bit here. Dean, can you handle that energy, taking a step back?
I'll try. Surrounded by all these spirit Halloween bones, I'll do my best.
Clear the bones off your desk for a moment and just get ready for this one. This is a really recent question from the Christianity subreddit that was asked only 8 hours ago, and the question is titled Pastoral Etiquette? We have a pastor at the church now who prays alone before he speaks. He gets up out of his seat during the special music just before the sermon, and he kneels with his rear in dress pants in full view of the whole church. I haven't spoken to anyone else about this, but the view makes me a bit uncomfortable. Why would a pastor do that? So, Dean, first of all, why would a pastor do that? Why would he show his rear in dress pants, don't worry, to the whole church? And what are some things that a pastor could do that isn't this that might be just as good?
Right. See, this is why I love Catholicism, because we've got the big robes. They hide your figure. I feel like it all kind of makes sense. True, modest dress in the liturgy. The question that's coming to mind for me is it better or worse that he's in dress pants?
Yeah, worse. Worse is the answer. We know this. It's worse. It's worse because you can see his full big butt, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. Obviously, there are a variety of things the pastor could do and should do differently, and definitely your first move should be to go ask people on Reddit, famous for being normal, to find out what exactly you should say. But I think, yeah, you need to have a discreet conversation with this pastor and say, look, I'm sure there's nothing wrong. I'm sure that you're not being a weirdo, but if I brought my teenager and his friends to church on Sunday and they saw you do this, it's all they're going to talk about at breakfast. And I just want you to know that's the consequence of the choice that you're making.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's good. Okay. I think that part of the problem isn't just that he's showing his whole sort of rear in dress pants, of course, to the whole church. That's not great. That's just, I think, like a morsel of the problem in this question. So the bigger thing is
I don't like that word.
No, I'm sorry for using it. I think the bigger problem here is that he has sort of like a full run up to the sermon. He gets up out of the seat during the music. He kneels with his rear, and he prays silently before he gives the sermon. And it's like, to me, this feels very much like when a wrestler comes out and there's sort of music playing and they do sort of a bit. And I think that that's kind of what this is. So I wonder if the pastor could just do a better bit. If he could have some special music that's a little bit better. More sort of like, like the first 5 seconds to Smells Like Teen Spirit. And then he can kind of do like a cool jump on stage. And he can still show his rear to everybody if he wants to. But I'm just saying that it would be sort of a better energy if that was the vibe.
Yeah, some pyrotechnics, some smoke and mirrors. I think that would work. They could also put the cross on the back of the church, so he goes up and he only shows his rear to the worship band, and everybody else can see his balding head. I think that might work.
Yes.
Additionally, I feel like this is kind of an abuse of pastoral privilege. There's like, if you get up during the special music, you're going to feel kind of guilty about it. If the pastor gets up, what gives him the right to do it? And I think that you should test that out. And when he gets up, just get up at the same time and go up and also do a little bow. And I think that it will just sort of show in a polite and discreet way how weird it really is.
That's like the situationist answer to this, right? Where you sort of create an uncomfortable situation for everybody. That's cool. Right. You know what the only thing I can think about right now is, you know how cool it is when like a wrestler does kind of just start running towards the ring and then they slide on their stomach under the ropes? What if your pastor just did that? I think that would be very cool. And also, if you brought your teen and their friends to church with you that day and your pastor did that, that's also all they would be talking about at breakfast. True. But in like a very positive way. Like, hell yeah, that guy rules. I love this church.
Right. See, this is actually the thing. If you're going to be Protestant, you should just really have a good time with it. I think that's the thing Protestants don't get. Yes. Like if you're Catholic, you've got a whole thing you got to do. And it's important that you do the whole thing and you do it the right way, the same way every time. And, the Eucharist, you can't get too wild with that. I think if you're a Protestant, if you have like a little communion wafer, you should be able to do a kind of like Harlem Globetrotters thing with it. Like if you can get that thing spinning on your finger, just like find a few other tricks throughout the set. I think that would really work.
Going to an evangelical megachurch kind of situation is really diagonal from going to a wrestling event. So I think you're on the right track if that's where you're taking your cues.
All right. I think that we've really christened this Bone Church with enough good questions to kind of make us feel a little more comfortable in the space. Maybe next time we'll be able to invite some students in here, get their take on it. I want to move to a couple of current events to prove that this is at least tangentially still a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. And how do you feel about that, Matt?
No, I think that's great.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Here's what I want to talk about. On February 28th, a few days ago, from when we're recording this, there was what people have called, for reasons I don't understand, an economic blackout. which basically amounted to some people deciding they weren't going to buy anything for a day. 24 hours. No, nothing. Don't buy even a single thing. And if you have to buy something, they would say, you can buy it from, I don't know, your local store or whatever. And I saw it going on the internet. To me, it all felt very absurd, very funny. And I want to talk through why it's funny. But the immediate results of this, I think, just kind of help us find our way into this conversation. So AP, they published a story right away talking about it and what's going on with it. And here's something I didn't know, and I don't know if you know this either, Matt. This whole thing was called for by something called the People's Union USA, which was founded by a guy named John Schwartz, who is a meditation teacher living in Chicago.
Oh, that rules.
And he did create a GoFundMe and has gotten over $100,000 apparently.
Wait a minute.
People gave him that much money when they weren't buying anything. They gave him that money instead. And I think that is all pretty wild. There's more to say in here, including estimates about whether or not it would have an impact. But I also Googled it today, a few days later. This is March 3rd. And these are just a couple of headlines. One is from Forbes: Target loses web traffic as Costco gains on February 28th, economic blackout day. Another from Forbes: Amazon defies economic blackout as sales climb during boycott. And there's several others kind of all with the same news. But the point being that in the end, the meditation teacher couldn't pull it off. People on the internet posted about it, but posting was not enough. So we can talk more about this in a minute, but what do you think, Matt?
I am annoyed by it instantly. Every year, every 6 months, there's a call for a general strike. There's a call for a boycott. There's a call for whatever. And it's always the most frustrating thing because it's coming from a place not of organization and not really even mobilization. It's just coming from a place of like people posting that wouldn't this be cool if it happened? And it sucks because it doesn't really get you anywhere, but it does create a situation where the people who decide to take part, that are really invested, right? People that are feeling isolated and powerless in the world, they decide to jump on board and they do the economic boycott. They call off work for a day or something in some weird circumstance. And like what happens is nothing. That they try to engage in collective action, quote unquote collective action, and what they get is absolutely nothing. And then it kills their feeling of, any feeling of an empowerment they might have built through the experience. And I think everyone just ends up worse than they started. It's so annoying. I hate this stuff so much. Maybe that's like curmudgeonly of me, but a boycott, a strike, anything, it takes real organization, not just people vibing on the internet. And I hope that someday people realize that's the case. I don't know. That's it. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I have to agree. I feel the same way. I mean, I think, trying to be as like optimistic as possible. I think it's good that people, first of all, think rich people are bad. And that's maybe one thing that's being signaled there, and that they have power in society and that there's kind of an economic like base of power. I think most charitably, that's something that, people are recognizing, and they want to feel like they can intervene. Like they want to see how are they related to the kind of circulation of power in capitalism. And that is a great impulse and something you don't always get in society. But I think the danger is that by focusing on the consumption side of the equation when it comes to capital, people are kind of like re-inscribing the power of capital itself. So you're fundamentally identifying that your power is in what you choose to buy or not buy, your consumption. And, as good people who read Karl Marx and all the rest of them, I think it's helpful to recognize that really the key is to see your power in your relationship to production. As a working person, one way or the other, if you don't go to work, then profits don't get made, as opposed to if you don't buy stuff, profits don't get made. And I feel like, the one thing that kept coming to mind for me watching all this unfold on the internet is it's good that people want to do something. It's a challenge to the left to actually figure out how to like communicate to those people in a way that makes sense and tries to, hijack that that sentiment into something actually sustainable. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's got me thinking a lot about all that kind of stuff. And also, man, people just don't know how the economy works or how they're related to it in the US in a specifically brain breaking way.
Yeah, totally. I think that makes sense. The at the bottom of it all, I mean, it's true. It is a communication problem on the left. The left in the United States, whatever that might mean, trade unions, DSA, other socialist organizations, etc. Right? They need to figure out how to talk to people about like what it is that they think they need to do, what must be done, etc., etc. We know it. That's true, but also I think that there is a really baseline problem, a hurdle, a buffer that like organizing is just like really hard and it requires you to actually do a thing, whereas an economic boycott just is like a solitary action that you just kind of are supposed to do, and maybe that makes you feel good. I don't know, which is something to think about too, and like the desires that motivate people and how to get people to like move past doing one thing and doing something else. These are all really great questions that activists should be asking themselves, but yeah, in a different context, in a different organizing structure, not just like a weird guy on the internet. I cannot imagine, what is this guy getting money for? Like, what is the GoFundMe for? Because it was just like a one social media graphic I saw posted over and over again. Like, what possibly could he have used that money for other than just grifting?
I mean, is there any use for it other than grifting? I really couldn't tell you.
Okay.
There is a really funny comment here in the article, though, not quite related to that, but maybe in part, where this person who is a chief retail advisor at market research firm Circana makes a really funny observation saying, it doesn't look like anybody's really pulling back. If you get 5% or 10% of people that don't shop, that could happen on any given day because of the rain. Yeah. I think that is basically it, right? Like, and it speaks to that organizing problem. Like, a guy on the internet who's a meditation teacher absorbing money for who knows what is not an organized movement, and, can't claim to make one. Whereas the need to do all the hard stuff, building apparatuses that can make demands and enforce them and so on, that's the long-term thing that we just don't have right now. And I think that's also the perennial challenge for the Trump years, but also during Biden and whoever comes next, that everybody always wants to respond to current events in the immediate, which I think is necessary. But the kind of long-term stuff you have to do, building relationships, building organizations, that is, just rough. Rough going, and there's no shortcuts for getting there. And I think that's the key message to these kinds of failures, is that they will always fail as long as there's not some kind of organized movement behind it.
Yeah. Let me make one clarification. A minute ago, I said something about that guy being a grifter, and let me just be clear. I don't know if he is. I'm asking the question. I don't want to necessarily go to my way to disparage somebody I don't know, but I don't know. I'm just asking questions here, guys.
Yeah, that's all right. Just asking questions is all you really need to do, I think.
Sure. All right, let me tell you about some other news that is good, bad, who can say really what it is. Interesting, all the same. This is from February 27th, pretty recently. In Charleston, West Virginia, breaking news: a resolution aiming to recognize the Holy Bible as foundational text in the state of West Virginia was introduced into the West Virginia House of Delegates on February 27th. This is like, I don't even know why this is breaking news. This kind of stuff happens in conservative states every now and again, where like they Republicans or other weirdos, I guess, try to find ways to like worm the Bible into state standing, I guess, in one way or the other. You see all kinds of like fights about how to get the 10 Commandments into courtrooms or whatever. But this one struck me as particularly funny because it's like a resolution aiming to recognize the Bible as a foundational text in the state of West Virginia, which is, I mean, what could that possibly mean? First of all. But it gets funnier when you get to some of the specifics, I guess. So the resolution is very funny because it gets into some specifics where the resolution would recognize the Bible only in the state of West Virginia. Keep in mind that the Bible is divinely inspired and inerrant in a foundational document in our society and government. It is an accurate historical record of human and natural history, and it's the utmost authority on human moral behavior. Um, so these three things are very funny for a lot of different reasons. The Bible is a very complicated, big collection of books. And to say that it is like it's inerrant and it's also an accurate historical record of human and natural history is very funny, because if you read it, you'll find out there's all kinds of very weird contradictions in this Bible that are not like, it's always at odds with one another. That's very funny. Though I do also like if this was passed, God forbid, I think it would be stupid if it was, but if the state of West Virginia did, I feel like it does give like a handful of sort of like religious activists a whole lot of ammunition to start using against people in the state of West Virginia. If the Bible is the utmost authority for human moral behavior, you can whip out James 5. You can talk about the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. You can talk about communism. It's all in there, and that's great. The forgiveness of debts. It's a lot of good stuff. So I don't know. Of course, like this would be bad in a whole lot of ways, I think, for people. But were it to come to pass, I think that you could have a lot of fun with it. So I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't pass the West Virginia House of Delegates or whatever it's called. But if it does, wouldn't it be really funny for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's great because it's also just a hilarious assertion of Protestant supremacy. Only 66 books in there. Sorry to everybody else, I guess.
Yeah.
That's very funny to me. But I agree. People should really just lean into it. Yep, we're doing communism. It says it right in the Bible. Sorry, you're just going to have to deal with it. Acts 2 and 4. That's the model. Rich people, they don't get to go to heaven. That's what the state believes. I think that's a pretty good idea.
I think it's a good idea, too. All right, I have one more current event if you want to talk about it. Or
yeah, of course.
Okay, great. This comes from this is UK current events, and it's not even really current. It's current in the sense of an ongoing trend in the Church of England. This comes from a reputable publication called Church Times, and the title of this article is "Gen Z are open to faith, but not to the Church of England." So some tough news for the people of our Anglicanism. I'm sure this has already been posted there, and if not, I'm going to go post it there right now and get all of the Reddit points. All right. So this is an article that was posted just a few days ago on the 21st of February, and it starts off with this context. I'm going to kind of walk through the article because I think it's very funny and not interesting funny, just funny. Analysis of Gen Z, people born as I was roughly between 1997 and 2012, have been a fixation of the media in recent months. This is the author speaking, whose name is Abigail King. A survey published by The Times this month explored our generation's relationship with institutions, uncovering widespread mistrust and a distaste for national pride. I wonder why. I wonder why any of that is the case. Gen Z are shunning the status quo of our parents' generation and desperately seeking strong leadership and clear direction. Another recent survey conducted by one poll found that 60% of Gen Z identified as spiritual in some regard. So young people are open to the idea of faith, but nobody's going to the Church of England is the observation that they're making there. The person goes on to say, writing this article, the communication problem, which they identify as one of the key issues that that the Church of England is having with Gen Z. The communication problem is evident, most of all through the Church of England's social media presence. Simple graphics and millennial-esque video transitions are not enough to connect to young people. Most of this content is about informing but not actively engaging. I'm sure that this works for people like my mom, who is a churchgoer and wishes to stay updated with the happenings of the General Synod, but to anyone else exploring faith, it seems inaccessible. I fundamentally hate this. It's fun. Like, first of all, whatever. Having a social media presence is totally fine, whatever. But like, I swear that the Church of England cannot start making sort of like brain rot Gen Z videos or something to connect with the youth. That would be the most awful thing I can imagine.
I don't know.
I think that it's better to let the Church of England
put Justin Welby's face on a Thomas the Tank Engine train and just kind of see what happens.
Okay, that would be great in a sort of different way. But like, I would rather Anglicanism die than having somebody tell me about the Skibbity Rizzler Ohio communion wafers you can get or whatever. Like, I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Nobody needs this. Like, oh man, no way. I don't like it at all. The article goes on. It's not just the communication of the church on social media that is a problem. Thank God. There's other problems too that they note. So, for example, they said, before even getting into debates over the place of liturgy or the finer details of Anglican theology, good, let's not get to those things at all. This is a generation who struggle with the concept of sin and salvation. The rhetoric that they remember from religious studies lessons at school, for many, the only time when they encountered Christianity, is that of judgment and wrath. In conversation with my friends, church has become synonymous with guilt. It's not even seen as a place of community and inclusion, but of ostracism and hypocrisy. This is, I think, all great observations about why people don't really care for church in general, especially not the Church of England, especially not Anglicanism. Just be better is maybe it. Get good. If you're mad about people not coming to church, get good at being church, I think, is maybe the moral of the story. Not that I have like a quick like speed run to how to do that, but man, the Church of England is always such a mess, especially the leadership is kind of crazy. But anyway, it's very funny to see people grappling with the Church of England and sort of like the weird generational context. Something I don't actually put a lot of stock in. I think that dividing up generations based on like a rough bunch of years and sort of like stereotypes and tropes is probably not really that helpful. But anyways, always interesting to see people think about about how to reach the young people. A perennial question of dying church institutions.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one picture of an Anglican church going around that also had a skate park inside, which I guess is probably not a church anymore, but what if it also was? I think that's the real questions they should be asking.
Skate church is great. We've already talked about wrestling church, and we've got the bone church. And like these are the three churches. These are the purpose-driven youth ministries that you can have in your church today. I'm sure that if you do them just right, you'll get a lot of people coming to your churches. And hopefully some pastors out there give it a good shot.
Yeah, and in the meantime, just fill the basement full of bones. See what happens.
It couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt to keep some bones down there.
Hurt? It couldn't.
Get the dry bones, not the wet ones.
Not the wet ones. That part is very important. Thanks for listening to the Magnificast. If you like what you heard, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but if you did, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/themagnificast. If you didn't like what you heard, you should go do that now so that you can exercise your vote and vote with your dollar so you can prevent things like this from happening in the Discord in the future. Our music is by Mario Armstrong. Our outro is by The Illogical Spoon, and we'll see you next week.
I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, keep your hoods up. Keep your hoods up and you stay up late. In Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Oh, don't mind a cold night, but we might mind if you leave too soon. So come on now, it's still early. Beside what else are you gonna do? As we kissed in the alley by the Michigan Theater, fall snow was glowing in the lights of the downtown. Saw a spark in your eyes, I just spoke it. Said we're gonna turn this whole place upside down. Then you said, my dear, do you really mean this? I said, I only know what I feel right now. I said, poets lies